Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Hashim Kumar. Recent reports suggest that Moscow-backed psychological operations exploited the incursion of Russian drones into Polish airspace, flooding social media with narratives blaming Ukraine rather than Russia. Analysts warn that such disinformation on campaigns aim less at persuading audiences and more at creating confusion, division and mistrust in governments and alliances like NATO. Well, to explore the implications of hybrid warfare, psychological operations and the fight against fake news, we're joined by Professor Aleksandra Przegalińska, Vice Rector for Innovation at Kosminski University and Senior Research Associate at Harvard. Professor, welcome back to TVP World.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for taking the time. So we see how the drone attack by Russia into Polish airspace has actually been interpreted by certain disseminators of misinformation as an attack from Ukraine. How does that actually work? What's the thinking? I mean, was this planned right from the start, or was this just an opportunity that they decided to take advantage of?
Unfortunately, I believe it's all very well coordinated. So the attack itself and then narratives around the attack, we've heard several different narratives. I even encountered a narrative that claimed that those drones never even existed, that it's just fabricated information, that the pictures of drones are simple deep fakes. Next to it, you hear narratives about how these are just, Ukrainian drones instead, or that these were actually, old drones that were transferred to Poland by Ukraine. So you hear many different narratives at the same time, but all of them are supposed to actually claim that Russia is not to blame in this whole situation. And I agree, they are supposed to create a confusion because you hear so many versions of the same story that actually you become confused. And I think it is a fairly known strategy of disinformation, which is called flooding the zone. Sending so much information, so many lies into the public space that actually the audience is already so confused that they don't know what to believe in.
Right, but it is effective, isn't it? I mean, already the impact on the Polish public opinion has been pretty substantial, with many people who were asked saying that they believe that the drones did actually come from Ukraine. How do we counteract this kind of information flooding, as you put it?
It's very, very difficult, and I can confirm only that when it comes to this specific attack and the discourse around it, I see even on my own social media how people are confused and how many of them are in disbelief that it was actually Russia that launched these drones with a malicious goal. So if I see it in my social media bubble, I guess that means that for many other people it's the same. They simply witness the same phenomenon, and I think the best way to uncover this effort by Russia is to actually talk about it as much as we can on public media, like here, on social media as well. And we need a stance also from the Polish government and other important officials that it is an attack by Russia, and that Russia is actually using very cheap but very effective disinformation techniques like, bots that are commenting online that it was actually Ukraine, not Russia, who sent the drones. They have been using such techniques for a while already. And all of these techniques, unfortunately, are, as I mentioned, both effective and very, very cheap because it's not a big effort, right? It's not like building a big AI model. It's just using bots to spread this information that then can be amplified by some already radicalized voices. So I think the only good technique technique right here is just talking out loud about how Russia is trying to disinform the West, is trying to spread confusion, and we should be talking about it as much as we talk about the attack itself.
Certainly, I understand. Now, you mentioned AI. Now, as the use of AI evolves, which is happening very, very quickly, of course, is it possible that the whole disinformation strategy can be worked out in advance? You press the go button and off you go. So, first there's one message, and then, once that's taken root, another message comes along, and it actually works out to actually a very long and deeply penetrating strategy. How likely is that?
Mm-hmm. I think it's very likely, and I think you can plan ahead, and you can send those armies of bots into different channels that were targeted prior. And I think you can also spread and multiply a lot of content, because AI models today can generate so many versions of the same story and present so many different narratives that they themselves are sort of, an effective tool to spread many different mixed messages. But I think the West has to get used to this. Unfortunately, we've seen how Russia has been using social media effectively for the past decade, really, to spread misinformation or various radical points of view online. And I think it's also important that we focus on how to counter their narrative using the same means, because we can also use bots, we can also use AI to counter that disinformation, but to also classify that disinformation, to prevent that disinformation from happening. There are many websites that have been really sort of transformed by Russia to present their narrative instead of the real content that is on that website. It's also a known technique, right? Where you, for instance, have web crawlers that are looking online for various information sources, and Russia has been quite effective in turning those sources of information into something that supports their own narrative. And we already know about it. And I think it's very, very important for cyber defense specialists from all over Europe to try and figure together the best, most effective technological means of confronting what Russia is doing, because we can do that. We know these techniques.
Right. Okay. Is the West doing enough? Is it using these techniques sufficiently to counteract these threats from Russia?
My honest opinion is that it is not using enough of these techniques, and it is not doing enough. And I think we are being far too gentle in this situation. That is not going to get any better. It seems like Russia right now is advancing, moving forward. Putin seems to be very, very confident about his actions. And I think this is the time to act. And as I said, use the same means to counter their efforts. So for me, the West is still sort of playing slightly too soft. And I think the efforts should be definitely enhanced.
So step up the cyber defense and perhaps go into attack mode. Now, psychological operations are part of a whole package of hybrid warfare techniques. So that's everything except kinetic warfare. So how does this disinformation campaign fit in with other techniques, such as the use of migrants at the border, for example?
I think it's all a very coordinated effort. As we were mentioning prior, Russia is now a country that really lives off its military sector. It's an economy that is focused only on military goals. There are no other goals for the Russian economy at this point. They're selling oil to finance their war. So I think it's all a very centralized effort and a very, very well coordinated effort to spread misinformation, spread fear of migrants, but also provocate, right? The provocation that we've just seen the other day with the drones is a great example of that. So I think all of that is quite well figured out. But on the other hand, we can also say that these techniques are not particularly sophisticated. They're effective, They're very polarizing, but they're not extremely sophisticated. So I think our intelligence, our cyber defense specialists should be putting a lot of effort into unpacking these strategies. Some of them are kind of easier to foresee because they're using fairly crude methods, and try and counter them because Russia, doesn't have any other goals than this, right? Spreading disinformation and grabbing land is sort of the ultimate goal of Russia today and for the next year for sure.
Well, so it would seem, Professor, and more to be done, as you say, by the West in counteracting this. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, there was lots more coming up. Goodbye.